Welcome everybody to this week's session. Let me just see if I don't want to zoom in too much. Actually, that just about works. So welcome to this session on ongoing collaboration and improvement on the Skore platform. So as always, there's normally a question or something that's driving some of the sessions and why we run the sessions when we do. So this is one that's a question that's come up a few times recently about what's the best approach for doing process improvement or continuous improvement, or what's the best approach for capturing ideas, opportunities, thoughts around improvements that we can make to process. And I think sometimes when we go through the training, there's a couple of different ways that we can do that in Skore. And so one of the things I want to do today is sort of show the different approaches and when you use them. And then one of the other driving factors behind this is an area that we're currently looking at improving. So again, just sort of sharing this with the community, getting people to sort of think about this. So I know there's teams out there using some of the feedback and comments feature today, and others that are thinking about it or talking about it or planning it. So again, it's a chance to sort of show the thinking behind the current approach. And as I said, we're currently looking at making improvements, and it's not that we're going to change anything radically. It's about improving what we have today. So the underlying process that we'll go through in this session will stay roughly the same. So you'll see that we've what I've done here is sort of just kind of done a very high level process to walk through this, and it breaks down really into two sections. So the first bit is all about the kind of initial documentation of process. So that's often in a lot of projects, or if you're building a process library, this is the first bit about that. We sometimes call it the build phase. So this is where you've got a team that are going out to capture the processes, standardize them, get the sort of as is, and get them published and ready for people to use. The second part of this process, which is sort of the bottom section, if you like, is all about the ongoing collaboration and improvement piece. So, and again, the distinction here is about the tools that you might use in Skore to capture the thoughts and feedback, because as I said, that's one of the questions that comes up. So in that process discovery or documentation phase, what tends to happen is you're doing lots of workshops, you're collaborating with people in terms of live discussions about the documenting the process and understanding the process. So those of you that have been through our training programs and onboarding will probably be familiar with the use of custom fields to capture improvement opportunities. So just to show you that, when we've documented a process, what we'll often talk about is, as you're describing the steps in the process or the outputs in the process, there's always side conversations on, okay, well, this is how we do it today, but actually it'd be much better if, or this is a real pain for us today. It takes us much longer than we think it should do. There's got to be an opportunity to improve this or make it better or to automate or whatever it is. And so at that point, so this is when you're in the workshop, you're documenting the process. The recommended approach is around using custom fields. So we use the attachment on the activity box, and then here on the left-hand side in the panel that opens, we've got what we call the custom field. So if I click add custom field, these are all customizable. So these are all examples that I've added. Now, how you capture this information or what you call it might depend on what your preference is or what the organization's preference is. Some teams I've worked with, they want to they'll focus on pain points. So what are the problems we're dealing with today? One of the reasons for using that sort of language is it helps people to focus on, it helps people to prevent people from solutionizing too early. So it's like, let's just focus on what the problem is today. And once we gather that, we can then talk about what solutions we might implement into the process later on. I personally, I find it's a little bit difficult one. So I prefer to talk about improvement opportunities. Now that does open you up to sort of people talking about solutions, and sometimes that's not a bad thing because you can get some good ideas from it. But what I have found over the years of doing this with some teams, that if you talk about problems and pains, that can often be a little bit uncomfortable. So some teams, they'll say, well, we don't have any problems in our process, it's perfect. I mean, it's never perfect, but they don't like to talk about the problems. Whereas if you can rephrase the question in different ways, like, what if you could change anything, what would it be? They're often much more open to talk about, well, do you know what, this takes us quite long, and it'd be nice if we could reduce the time that takes, or if we could improve the quality of X. So hence why I've tended to use the language around improvement opportunity. So if you haven't used custom fields or created one before, if you don't have one called improvement opportunity or whatever you want to call it, you can just go use the create new at the bottom. As soon as you've done that once, it'll appear in this menu. So I'll go there, click improvement opportunity. So again, custom field is very, very simple. There's an optional grouping section. I say optional, I don't really use it if it's an improvement opportunity. What I'm interested in here is the comment field. So it's just a text field. And this is where I would describe the improvement or the opportunity or whatever it is. So just write that description in there, click confirm, and then that gets saved against that step in the process. So again, just as a reiterating that, the benefit of doing that is you're often in the conversation about the process. You're talking about how the process works, and someone says, oh, that's a problem, or we should fix this. You can just capture it and you can carry on talking about the process. And the benefit is at the end of the session or the workshop, you can then just run a report, and you can say, show me all the improvement opportunities, and the system will just then produce a report with them. So you've captured that information at that point, and you've got it associated with the step in the process. Now, again, a little bit out of scope for what we're talking about today, but that's often your first pass. So what you end up with is a big long list of improvement ideas, and then you probably want to do some sort of exercise around sizing those and prioritizing them. Often what you'll find is you get a number of improvements that are the same problem, just it's someone's describing different symptoms of the same root cause. So there's always a bit of work to go and say, is this worth fixing? Is it the same problem? And so on. So that's a typical piece of work that you'd have to do. And then once you've identified what those improvements are going to be, you can then go and design your 2B process to go and fix them. Might require some sort of system or whatever. So that's the method that we use around custom fields for capturing improvement ideas and feedback. And again, this is where you're in the workshop or you're in the process of actually documenting the process. That's when it's good to use them. What will happen is as you design your 2B process, these custom fields drop off, because as you implement those improvements, you delete them from the system and you don't need them anymore. Okay, so that's the sort of common one that people will see, especially when they go through our onboarding and training, because we generally tend to be quite focused on that process discovery, process mapping piece. And so in that exercise, that's how you'd use them. Now, what I want to do is then move into, okay, how do we get that ongoing sort of piece of gathering feedback and comments from people through the use of the process? So there's a couple of features that I want to share that I know not everyone's familiar with. That sort of get us to that point. So we've documented the process and we've probably designed some sort of 2B process. So very simply here, we got to the point where we're ready to publish that process, put it under version and control, and share it out with a wider audience in the organization. So one of the things that we introduced, I think probably around in the last 12 months or so, is this concept of participants, or being able to add and update the participants of a process. So before you go ahead and publish the process, it's definitely worth looking at this and thinking about this. So what do I mean by participants? If you look up here in the top right hand side of the screen, you'll see where you get these little sort of circles with initials in them. It's right next to the version history button there, or just before the share button. So if you move your mouse over that, you get this little drop down that says participants, and there's a configure button. So if I click configure, I can then add users to, so I'll just click that quickly so you can see it. You can see the 2 users I've already got in there. And then I can just add more users to that participants list. So you can think of the participants as a bit like the followers of the process, if you're thinking of sort of social media type language. And what this means is that when significant changes get made to the process, these participants will be notified by the system. Okay, so what will happen when we go and update the participants? We're then going to go ahead and approve and publish the process. So once that process gets published, any participants listed against that process will get a notification to say there's a new version of the process. So this is starting the process of communicating with key people who need to know about that process. Okay, now just to sort of kind of alleviate any fear of being overwhelmed with emails, what actually happens, this type of communication is not an immediate communication that goes out. What happens is the system will send out digests once a day. So it'll only send a digest to a user if there's a relevant notification associated with them. So I've got an example here of the digest email that goes out. So if there's been activity on the workspace and that user is touched by it some way, so if in this example they're a participant of the process and the process gets published, they'll receive the digest email. And so the digest email will list just at a very high level what the sorts of things are. So in my example that I've got here, there's 2 new comments have been added, but if it was a new diagram have been or a new process have been published or something like that, that'd be listed here. So from within the email, the user can click the open notifications page, and then that will take them to a page in the workspace that lists what the latest notifications are. And they could be all sorts of things. I've been talking about publishing, but it could be comments that people have left against the process, or replies to comments. Or again, if you're not aware, in Skore you can do @ mentions. So if you're editing a box, and I'll just pick any box here, so any text field, you can do an @ mention, and so you start typing in that person's name, and if you click on that, if I click on that, you'll see Colin's name gets put in against the process. Again, that triggers a notification out to that person at the next digest. So it's a really useful, I think sometimes underutilized tool. The participants thing is when you're editing. Sorry, when you're about to publish a process, is think about who are the sorts of people who might need to know about this, add them to the participants list, and then they'll get a notification to know there's a new version. So go through the approval publish, that's when it notifies them. The other key thing, so again, we're not going to go into setting this up and running it in this session today, but it is a key component in terms of driving ongoing collaboration and improvement of a process, is scheduling process reviews. So very, very high level. The review capability in Skore allows you to set up recurring reviews for one or more processes or documents. So you can create a review, you can set a schedule. I want this to run every quarter, every 6 months, every year, whatever it is. And then you can add reviewers against that, so people who will be sent a notification to remind them to review something. The review emails sit outside of the digest, so these are very specific emails that will go out to the users and tell them to take an action, i.e. reviewing. So this is slightly different from the participants. So the participants might be sort of anyone who needs to know about that process or use a given process, and they're only going to get those sort of notifications when certain things happen through a digest email. The reviewers tend to be more like a focused group of perhaps subject matter experts, and these are people you're saying, I want you to make sure this process is still fit for purpose, it's up to date, and so on. When a review goes through, users are encouraged to leave feedback using the comment feature, which I'm about to take you through in a second. So again, it is that key part of driving that ongoing improvement. So if you're not using reviews today, it is definitely worth thinking about setting that up, just to kind of make sure the processes get kept up to date. Okay, so at this point, you've now got a process that's been published, you've got reviews set up. So users are probably using the processes as reference material if they're not sure how to do something. But also, you should always be encouraging and training people to use the processes to provide feedback. If people are doing things and getting frustrated, or they don't understand why something's done in a certain way, encourage them to use the process as the mechanism or the forum to say what doesn't work and explain what doesn't work. Okay, so here I've kept this very simple at the moment. A user can log into the system and add a comment. Okay, so the comment button is at the top right hand side of the screen there. So come in here, I can add a comment, and I'll just call it my new comment here. So very simple, that's all I need to do. The basic is I can just write whatever it is my feedback is. There's a spelling mistake, or I think we could do this process a bit better, whatever it is. I can write that in there and then click add comment, and that gets added against the process. Okay, now I've got two other steps here. I might actually do them swap them around the way, do them in a different order than I've mapped them in here. You'll see I've put both of these are optional, but let's start with the add a call out. So when I add a comment to a process the way I've just done, it just sits against the process. It's not referencing any specific point in the process. But if I wanted to reference a specific step, I can add a call out. So again, it's optional, but it's useful. So I move my mouse over the little call out icon there, click, and then I can drag that, and let's say it's specific to this particular step there. It pops a little comment call out feature there, so that people can come in and they can see exactly where in the process that comment refers to. So the other option I've got there is what we call a comment type, and this is a configurable feature in the system. So I haven't actually got it configured in mine, but I'll show you what it does. It allows you, when you add a comment, to categorize it in some way. So if you want people to add comments, but you might want to think about them as change requests, or you could call them improvement ideas or something else, you can create and configure this little drop down that allows you to do that. So how you access comment types, so you need to be an administrator. So you go into the admin section of the workspace, and then here in the list of features under the data capture section, there's a section there called comment types. And if you come in here, you can create a new comment type, and I'll call this, I don't know, change request. Save that one, and then I'll add another one here, and I'll call this improvement idea, and click save there. So I've added those two. Now if I go back to my process here, I might just need to do a bit of a refresh to make sure that it picks those up. Okay, now you'll see there when I've refreshed that the little comment has disappeared, and that's because by default the display comments call outs are hidden, but if I want to show them again, I can use the little button up there to highlight them on the process. So I just go into my comment here, I can go and edit this comment, or I could add a new one, and now you'll see I get the comment type drop down, so I get that ability to choose different comment types. So by default, this is normally, there's nothing in there, so it's not shown, but you have that ability if you want to sort of drive or encourage people to leave different types of comments against the process. Okay, so that's the kind of basics. And again, what will happen here is when someone leaves a comment against the process, the participants will get a notification in the daily digest email. So again, they'll get the digest email, it'll say that some comments have been left against the process. They go through to the notification section, and then they'll be able to navigate to those comments within the given processes. So let's go back up. So now what we've done is people have now left feedback or ideas against the process, and our participants have been notified that a comment had been left. So what happens next? So I in my process here, I call this a sort of triage and manage feedback. If I go in here, there's a number of things that happen. So as participants, we've received a notification. So a participant can come in and leave a reply, and they can also like comments and replies. So if I click open the comment there again, you'll see underneath my comment there is a reply. So, I can add a reply. So again, if somebody's left a piece of feedback, others users see that, they can come in and say, oh yeah, I've experienced that too, or that's a good idea, but we could also think about this too. And so you can start to have a conversation around that particular idea that someone's had. Equally, you can like comments. So again, if someone's suggesting an idea and people come in and they don't necessarily have anything to say, but they think it's a good idea, they can click like as well. And so what you're doing is you're gathering more information about that particular comment, about whether people agree with it or not, and whether it's a popular, if it's an idea or whatever, whether it's a popular idea for people to have. Now, we also I've talked about this concept of the process champion. Again, not going to get too much detail about it here, but we often think about, you've got a process owner who has the overall accountability and responsibility for making sure that that process is executed correctly and is kept up to date. But often it's a process champion who's the person doing the sort of day-to-day updating the process if it needs to be updated, running the reviews, but also gathering the feedback and actioning them. So I've put both of them on here because sometimes the champion might, is going to have to work with the process owner to make, if an idea has been proposed, think about whether that's relevant and how it gets implemented. So I put in a step there where somebody in that team should have that responsibility for going and reviewing the comments to decide whether something gets done about it. So, ideally you've got additional replies and likes to help understand the feedback better and whether you're going to do something with it. And then if there's a decision to implement something, the champion may add additional information, because what they're ultimately going to do is go and assign this comment to somebody to do something with. So they might be signing it to another process editor somewhere, or they might just be assigning themselves to go and do something. Once they've got that information, they can go and assign it. So again, if I go and edit my comment, you'll see there's an assignee option, and it allows you to assign it to another user in the system. So you might do this when you go and create the comment initially, but it's not always obvious whether you're going to do something and who's going to do it. So you can come in and edit that and add that later on. But again, I'm going to come and use Colin here as an example. I'm going to assign that comment to Colin and save that. So again, Colin's going to, now that he's been assigned that comment, he's going to get a notification to say that he's been assigned the comment, and he can go and action it. It might be that as the process champion, you leave another reply saying, hi Colin, can you go and make this change, or this is what we propose to do. And then if I come back up here, what happens, Colin can go and take that change and he can go and implement it. So he's going to make the change to the process. He's probably going to go and approve and publish the process, at which point the participants again going to receive a notification through the daily digest that something's been updated. But he can then go in and mark that as completed. And so if I go and click the comments here, back in the comments section, you'll see there's this little button. So once he's gone and actioned that, he can click the little complete button and it gets completed. So the comment is still there. It still exists against the process, but you'll see it drops to the bottom of the list as it's been completed. And so you can sort of manage the comments that way. Comments can be deleted as well, so you can go and edit them, but it's a kind of neat way of just sort of managing the implementation of changes over time. You might use this alongside some sort of other project management team, but project management system, but it's just kind of nice little simple way of being able to add these and record what happens as they get implemented in the processes. There is some other pieces to show you. I think I've got here. So there is a report in the reporting tool under the main reports. There's a comments report. So that will basically run a report of all the comments in the system. It will show you what the comments are, tells you whether they're replies, who put them in there, what process they sit against when they were created and all of that sort of stuff. So if you want to export these out to an external format for some reason, you can do that from there. But also within the workspace, I showed the notification section, but there is also a comments section. If we come in the comments section, you can see all comments that are either related to you, or you can see all comments across the system as well. And again, in this section, you've got this view is broken down by the comments that are still live. And then if I scroll down to the bottom, you've got the completed comments. So again, it's just that sort of nice way of being able to track the feedback and then action it, and to be able to sort of see the progress of whether those have been done or not.